What's happening, everybody? Decided to record another video real quick. Not so much to celebrate the Panthers' victory in the Eastern Conference Finals last night, which I'm obviously very happy about as a Panthers fan. I'm also not going to do a whole breakdown of the series or the game. We've already done some videos on the Panthers, the Rangers, the series, some emotional responses to the fans, to the Rangers fans, and things like that. I think deeper into the offseason, we'll maybe break down a few teams around the league, including the Panthers, and what they need to do in the offseason, their style, their cultures, and we might see coming up for next season. For now, I actually wanted to focus, now that we've had 3 rounds of playoffs this year, plus the run from the Panthers last year, plus the year before, with Huberdeau and those people when they won the President's Trophy, but fell short in the second round against Tampa, to just kind of go over 5 things that I think in general, fans, pundits, NHL folks around the league that maybe don't watch the Panthers as consistently, or maybe have only watched them a bit in the playoffs, I think get wrong about the Panthers, or I don't think kind of fits what the team actually is in terms of their identity, in terms of how they play, in terms of the level of skill. And I feel like some of the narratives around this team, it's a little bit skewed, kind of a little bit off. And I kind of want to go over 5 areas where I think that's the case, and just touch on why I think people might sort of never kind of see the Panthers coming, even though they have been one of their favorite teams. I always see them kind of discounted a little bit. They don't have the huge names outside of Kachuk and now Barkov that's getting more attention. Like some of these other franchises like the Oilers, the Leafs, even the Bruins and Rangers. So anyway, I'm going to go over 5 things that as a fan that has been following the team closely for a long time, and then especially the last few years, and seeing the turn on the Paul Maurice. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the idea of this nastiness, or the Panthers being a dirty team. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they're a very physical team. That last year in the run, because the team wasn't very deep, I mean, half the Panthers roster was either AHL guys or very old guys, and the team didn't have the level of experience that it has now. I think there's this narrative that the team was very nasty or dirty. It has Sam Bennett, who's a very tough player, as we see against the Rangers, or so against the Rangers, a very high performer in the playoffs, a very valuable player, a guy who can score, who can do a lot, can take over a game, who never quits. But he's also known as a guy that can be kind of dirty, that can sneak in hits, that some people say that he likes to dive or whatever. I think this is a lot of players around the league. I mean, Marchand does the same. There's a bunch of guys that do the same. Actually, he's always willing to fight. He'll drop the gloves with anybody. He has always done that in his career. He's a great fighter, actually, and kind of a psycho, kind of a real tough guy, even though he's not the biggest guy. So anyway, but this idea that they're a nasty team because it has Nick Cousins, or has Kachuk, who's an instigator, and Bennett. If you really look at how the Panthers have played, especially since last season and in this season in the playoffs, they've been a very disciplined team for the most part. And yeah, like Bennett snuck in a punch against Marchand. Like every series is a player that gets away with something, or that sneaks in a punch or a stick, or even does something even more cowardly, who's not even willing to fight. There are guys who like to spear, all kinds of stuff. Guys who get away with stuff after the whistle. We see Trouba like banging people against the boards all the time after a whistle, gets away with it over and over. Anyway, these guys are all around the league. Every team, most teams, I should say, have 1 or 2 of these guys. And then, to be honest, if you want to win in the playoffs, you kind of need those kinds of guys. Evander Kane for the Oilers likes to start a lot of shit all the time. Darnell Nurse is very physical. You need to have a little bit of that nastiness in you, I think, to be able to compete. Jamie Benn for Dallas, we know that has a history of suspensions. So it's not like, I'm saying, like every team has 1 or 2 of these guys. I think with the Panthers is because the whole team is more willing to fight and get into it and get into scrums and doesn't shy away from that. There's this narrative that there's a dirty or nasty team. And actually this year, the team has been very disciplined, especially in the playoffs. But in terms of just getting into it more and more, unless the other team is instigating, the Panthers haven't really done that. They've been very mature, very patient. And yes, they're willing to drop the gloves. They're willing to fight. They're willing to do scrums. They'll sneak in a punch if, against Marchand. I mean, come on, those kinds of people kind of are asking for it. But, people talk about what Bennett did to Matthew Nice last year. Listen, it was a tussle. They both were grabbing each other, and Bennett slammed him down because Matthew Nice, it's a bigger guy, and doesn't even know how to do that, but he's the one looking for it too. And so when you get into those kinds of moments in the playoffs, you're going to get hurt if you don't know what you're doing. So the advice is maybe don't look for it. We saw it against the Bruins and Leafs where Marchand just ran him over, Matthew Nice. And so, this is not anything new. So yeah, I just think this idea that is super nasty. I think a lot of people were expecting the Panthers to give up a bunch of power plays and, they were going to get lit up by the Rangers and the Bruins and everybody. And they were very disciplined throughout. I think the first couple games against Tampa, we kind of took a few high-sticking penalties, but outside of that, watch the team. The team likes to forecheck. They're very pesky. They're go after you on the boards. They hit you. Even toward the end of the game yesterday, Montour's laying Wember out and Kulikov is wiping people out. They do that, but that's not dirty. That's physical. That's hockey. That's how it used to be in the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s. And they kind of have a little bit of brand of hockey in them, which is, as a fan, I have to say, I think every fan base should wish to have a team that can do that when it counts. And guys like Montour and Kulikov, who are not the biggest dudes or the nastiest dudes, who can lay a guy out, a Mikkola who can clear the front of your net, not a dirty player, just a physical player. That can help you win in the playoffs. And I think we've seen over and over how teams who are willing to do that. Tampa's not a team that looks for a fight, but all of them are willing to get into it all the time. And their defense is super nasty. So, and in a good way. So anyway, I just want to say this idea that the Panthers are just dirty or nasty or the dirtiest team, I just think that's skewed. I don't think that's true. I don't think the Panthers are getting suspensions left and right. I think what Bennett and Cousin do, a bunch of other guys around the league and even more higher profile players tend to do and get away with it. Sidney Crosby has gotten away with stuff in his career and done dirty stuff, but once you become a champ, I guess everything's forgiven. So yeah, I just think that narrative gets blown out of proportion. And I think some of that was maybe a little bit more accurate last season when the team kind of needed to be that to overcome the lack of skill and depth in the playoff. But if you watch them this year, if you saw them in the playoffs, but even during the regular season, they were not that kind of a team as much, even though, again, they're willing to, you see them against Ottawa, everybody getting a misconduct or whatever. Ottawa was starting that stuff. It was Brady Tkachuk out there, starting stuff. Watch the replays. Watch what happened in that game. If you do that to us, we're going to respond. If you hit Barkov and slam him down, we're going to come after you, but that's a good thing. So anyway, I just think that people don't get that right. I think they're a physical team. I think their team is not afraid to get into it. They're not afraid to instigate a little bit at times when it feels to them like it's the right thing to do to get somebody else to take a penalty. They did that against Boston. Boston took a lot of bad penalties. But that's just hockey, man. That's just the way to play. And I just want to say, I think this idea that they're just nasty or dirty or whatever, that's not true. I think they play hard, play with a lot of heart. They're not afraid of people. And I think that's good. And I think, and they developed that. They were not that team 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So the fact that they've become this team is actually a good lesson for a lot of other teams to think about that, maybe some of your guys can be coached up to play a little bit more like that. Even guys who are not necessarily that kind of a player. The second thing is this idea that the Panthers are a defensive team. The Panthers are very solid defensively. They have been this season. They were last year too on the Maurice. I think it's because of the system they play. I think it's because they're a lot more physical on defense, a lot tighter. They don't block a ton of shots, even though they did, I think, yesterday. But they tend to just be smart about how to cover on the walls. They have very fast guys like Forsling and Montour who can move. They have a veteran now in Ekblad who's a lanky, long guy, Mikkola, Kulikov, OEL. These are long, lanky guys that can strip pucks, that can hit. And that really can help on defense. Bob has been solid. When you keep the shots down, I think the Panthers are one of the teams that allow the fewest shots this season. And you let him see the puck and doesn't get as many shots, I think Bob can succeed. I think when he was getting lit up 2 years ago, and it was a free-for-all and we were playing a rush game, I think Bob struggled a lot more. He's not as elite without a solid defense in front of him, in my opinion. But when he does have a good defense, he can be really good for you. He can steal you a couple of games. He can make some key saves, and he did that all season, has done it in the playoffs. So the Panthers are solid defensively, but they're not built to be a defensive team. We don't play just the counter. We're not a rush team. What we do is to play the forecheck and hem you in your own zone and not lay you out. And that's kind of the bread and butter. And we do give up with that style a few rushes. I think this season we give up a lot of rushes. But the idea is that you're willing to live with some of that, knowing that Bob can save you a lot of those, but you're also going to dominate the puck possession and you're going to get a lot more shots, and more often than not, you're going to get a win. So I think that, yeah, this idea that the Panthers are just a defensive team, I don't think it's actually quite true when you're watching closely. We tend to outshoot people. We tend to spend more time in the offensive zone for the most part, depending on the team. But I would say for most matchups we've had, and we're not willing to go on the rush when we have to. And actually, the last 2 games against the Rangers, even though we were dominant earlier in this series and kind of struggled to win when we were fully dominating the possession, I think the last 2 games when the Rangers were more desperate, we maybe didn't have as much possession overall. But we ended up still out shooting the Rangers, and we scored in the rush a few goals. So the team can be very offensive when it wants to be, and I would say on the forecheck, it spends a lot of time in the offensive zone. So again, a very solid team. When they need to clamp down in the third period, they're not going to let you move the puck. There's always a one-on-one guy on you, and going your way, not giving you space. That is how they play defense. But they're not like the most structured team defensively. They just play super hard on defense as some teams would do on offense. So anyway, that's the second thing. I don't think the Panthers are a defensive team. I think they just play really hard defense when they need to, and they score some key goals and really keep you in your zone on offense when they know that that's a good matchup for them. The other thing about them is the forecheck, which they're a forechecking team. That is their bread and butter. Is what Maurice brought here 2 years ago. He said it from the beginning. But I would say is the type of forecheck. People think that they're a team that just forecheck steals a puck and tries to score kind of in spurts or opportunistically. And that's true at times. I think last season was a little bit true, again, because we were not as deep and we would need to really take advantage of those moments. It happened against the Leafs, against the Bruins, a little bit against Carolina. But Carolina actually started to show what we've seen this season, which is the kind of forecheck that the Panthers have is the forecheck that really keeps you in your zone. The defensemen, they really seal the walls. They have 2 forwards going down deep. They're always attacking. When you watch them closely, even when the other team has the puck in their own zone, the Panthers never stop chasing, never stop going after you. They're willing to give up the space if you can go by them, but they're going to make you rush your pass. They're going to make you rush the play. They're not going to let you wait. And there's always a forward or a center going after the defenseman. And that's the kind of forecheck that you see. Once you get the puck, Lustrine, Lundell, Rodriguez, Verhaeghe, Kachuk, Bennett, Barkov, Reinhardt, all great on the walls, like really good on the walls, very hard to get the puck from. They never give up on the play. They're not all the most physical guys. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. But they're always willing to fight on the walls, to take the hit, protect the puck, turn. Verhaeghe yesterday is an example. Like, the guy must be so annoying to place against when you're a defenseman, because he just doesn't give up on the puck. He's always moving the feet, always turning around. Kachuk is really good, and Lustier are really good at taking the hit, putting the butt out, ass out, taking the hit, protecting that puck, and then getting the move on. And that gets you tired, man. And that I think allows the team to really stay in the offensive zone. So that to me is more of the kind of forechecking team they are. They can get steals, they can get quick opportunities. They still do that. But I actually would say that the emphasis more than that is to actually keep the puck in, to get you tired, and then look for opportunities. And if you sort of go down deep by the goal line and your forwards come down, they're going to get it up to Forsling, Ekblad, Montour, and then get shots from the point. Or if the Rangers, like the Rangers, they actually stayed up a bit more on men, then they're going to keep you down there and just get you tired. So anyway, just wanted to say, I think the kind of forecheck that the Panthers do is more of keeping it in your zone and really working on the walls versus like throw it in, try to get a quick steal and shoot. The other thing that I think people kind of don't really get fully is the coaching and front office impact on this team. Yeah, Paul Maurice came in and changed everything. He's been great. I love Paul Maurice from his opening presser. I know a lot of Panthers fans didn't like him last year for a lot of the year. I always fell in love with him. I think he's brilliant. I think he's smart. I think he knows the game. I think he knows how to surround himself by right coaches. I know how he knows how to defer to other coaches. He's a really good leader to the players. He's a good players coach, but also demands a lot of accountability. Anyway, I think he's great. And the only reason Paul Maurice doesn't have a better record, he hasn't won a title, is that he's chosen is to not chase cups. He played with Carolina for a long time and developed that team and took a team to the finals that was very undermanned against Detroit. And then Winnipeg tried to build a new franchise there and build a new team with a bunch of young players, took him to the conference finals. But he had a lot of guys that didn't want to play hard. We see how messy it is in Winnipeg. He was in Toronto for 2 years during a transitional period at the end of an era with Sandin and Matt Sundin. And when you look at those 2 years and who he had on that roster and the scoring on that roster, he got handed a shit team, and he almost made the playoffs the first year with a really bad team. He's a really good coach. He's in my mind, actually overachieved with the rosters and the team he's had. I don't think he's like been the favorite or whatever. A lot of these other coaches, they look at the teams that they've coached and how loaded they have been and why they maybe have a better record, why some of them might have a cup. Like Barry Trotz is somebody, who everybody thinks of as a winner, has a cup with Washington. Yeah, on his third season, the first 2 seasons with Washington, with Ovechkin, with a team that was winning the President's Trophy, it was elite. He got bounced in the second round twice before he won the cup. And before that, in 16 years coaching Nashville, I don't think he ever made a finals or even a conference finals. And I think he missed the playoffs half of the years that he was in Nashville. That's 16 years. And I know it was a new team at the time, but 16 years, and you only made the playoffs half the time. And I don't think he made a final or conference finals. That was Barry Trotz as a coach. And that doesn't mean he's bad, but that's what happens when you're dedicated to one team versus chasing. Then he went to chase in Washington or whatever. He got hired there, and I think with the third year, he won. And then, he kind of overachieved a bit with the Islanders because he made people play hard and then kind of burns out. But I'll just say that it's much easier to have the narrative of Barry Trotz being a great defensive coach or a great coach because he has that one cup with an elite team. But his record otherwise, you can see maybe it's not as elite. You see Pete DeBoer hasn't won one, has been to the finals a bunch of times, but look at the teams that he's coached when he's been to the finals. He's always been 3-4 years with a good playoff team. And, he was with Vegas when they made that run first. So anyway, I think Paul Maurice is just a guy who hasn't chased it the way other people have. Even Quenville was coaching, I think it was St. Louis, I want to say, in Colorado, I think it was, like when they had a bunch of Hall of Famers. Those were his first 2 coaching gigs in the NHL. He learned the ropes, then he got a generational team in Chicago, and then he won, And so I think Paul Maurice is up there with those guys. And that's one thing I think gets missed is that he is among the best coaches in the league. And not just because of the way he sounds or whatever, it's just truly the way he coaches, the way he's been able to transform and really get the team to buy in. But also Bill Cito and the entire front office, the amount of journeymen, the waiver wire players, the trades that he's made, the smart investments, the smart contracts. Cito just quickly turned his team around. And then the willingness to trade Huberdeau and Weegar, who were not good for the culture. I think even though Barkov was the captain, Huberdeau was a guy that everybody saw as a franchise player. And he's not, I'm sorry, but he's just not a winner. He's not a serious player in the playoffs. And I think they needed to get rid of his influence over Barkov. He's an older guy than Markov. And I think let Barkov become the leader and then have Tkachuk as the example versus Huberdeau. Let Ekblad sort of grow into his own. Let Montour become more of a leader. Montour came in with Weegar and Ekblad and was kind of sort of relegated to a lower place. The same with Forsling. I think Cito and the team and the coaches have sort of invested in the guys that they knew would be the leaders, made the right trades, even when everybody might not be for it. So most people thought he lost the Tkachuk trade. And I think the combination of all those factors have really led to the team that you have now. It's been transformational for the last 2 seasons. And I think a model for how you have to be willing to make it doesn't mean it's always going to go your way, because you can struggle, and the Panthers struggled last year before making the playoffs barely. So you have to be willing to put yourself through that. But I think people actually get wrong just how much of an influence Maurice and the coaching staff and the front office have had and really now turning the culture around. And I think this is the kind of Panthers team you're going to see going forward. They're not always going to get to the conference finals or the finals. Obviously, that's silly and ridiculous, but they have a very strong core. They have some young players coming up. And I think that even after Maurice is gone and Cito just, now became, I think, president or whatever in GM, this franchise has just completely changed. I think they're going to be up there with the Carolinas and the Tampas and the Bruins and those kinds of teams that really compete year after year. So anyway, that's another thing that I think gets maybe not wrong, but I think underplayed a bit in just the amount of influence. And then the last one is just the talent. And yeah, everybody kind of knows Tkachuk and Barkov and a little bit of, Ekblad because he's been around. And now, Verhaeghe with some of the overtime goals the last 2 seasons has become more of a popular player, 40, 30 goal scorer. But when you look at the talent on this team, and talent is not flashy, I think that's the misconception. People love like the fastest guys, the top 5 picks, the guys who can weave, the guys who can score. Regular season, light it up. It's beautiful to watch. It's fun. I'm not saying, I wouldn't want those guys on my team. It's always fun to have those guys. We had a great fun team 2 years ago with Huberdeau and all those guys in Leclerc, and he looked flashy, he looked beautiful, a bunch of comeback wins. It doesn't matter. We barely got through the Capitals in 6 games, and then Tampa completely schooled us in 4 games. Even though we had a lot of shots or whatever, like we didn't know how to play in the playoffs. And I think that the talent that we have is like when you look at Lundell, Lustrainen, Rodriguez, and Reinhardt, not the quickest, fastest guys. I mean, Verhaeghe's kind of quick, and Rodriguez is too, but not, guys who can miss shots, guys who are not necessarily snipers, who are not like the quickest. They're not going to turn around and do a weaving move. You might see that here or there from Barkov. Tkachuk has a little bit of that in him when he wants to, but the truth is that there's actually a lot of depth in terms of talent on the team. Like Forsling is legit talented. Montour is legit talented. Obviously, OEL is not older or whatever, and after the injuries, but he's a good talented guy for your bottom 6, for your bottom pair, I should say. And yeah, there's just actually more talent on this team that people realize. And the only reason why the numbers are not as high for some of these players is that they're willing to sacrifice the offensive numbers, including Tkachuk, including Barkov, who could be a 100-point player. Tkachuk obviously has been, but could be a lot higher too. Reinhardt finally had the goals this season. Bennett could be scoring 30 if he wanted. He's more of a 20-goal scorer. They sacrifice that for the sake of defense, for the sake of forechecking, for the sake of playing the right way. They don't do that every game. They don't do that every game of the season because that's impossible. We have down games, frustrating games. I wish we had a bit more scoring talent to kind of balance it out a bit more. But I think that one thing that does get ignored and kind of played down and maybe kind of underplayed is that the Panthers actually, in addition to the forecheck and the physicality and all that, they have legit talent. They have guys who are smart, who have vision, who have good hands, who can score some key goals, and who maybe don't put up as many points because they're, unlike some other teams, leaves. They're actually willing to do the hard work most of the season and definitely most of the playoffs. There's just rarely a game, a 60-minute game where the Panthers don't do that. And if they have a game where they play all out, kind of all flashy on the rush kind of game and they lose, between the players and Maurice themselves, like they get it corrected real quick. And so they know what their identity is and they are willing to sacrifice that. And they understand that to be a great player, it isn't just about putting up the numbers or looking the flashiest. It's about knowing how to win and when to score the key goals. I'll end with the idea that yesterday, the goal by Tarasenko, that game-winning goal, the perfect example of who the Panthers are and everything I've said today, which is you have Lustrainen not giving up on a puck that easily you could give up as a forward because you just dumped it in and guys weren't even that close and there's just Lusty trying to chase a puck, and I think it was Kendra Miller who had it. He doesn't give up. He just goes. He's lanky, he's fast, he's a smart guy. He lifts the stick and gets that puck right away because Keandre didn't probably even expect him to like get all the way there. Takes the puck, turns around quickly, gives it to him now. Lundell takes the puck. He's baby Barkov. He's got the vision, he's got the hands. Immediately, probably out of the corner of his eye, knows that Tarasenko is streaking, makes a great, fast, perfectly weighted, perfect speed pass to Tarasenko, who, it's a guy we have this year now who's also a good sort of natural scorer who just gets it in. And so to me, that's the forecheck, the hustle, the never giving up, the playing smart, playing hard, having then the quality, the skill to steal the puck, pass it back, get it in with the right kind of pass, and then to be able to score. And there's a lot of examples like that for the Panthers. But anyway, I think there's a lot more skill on the Panthers team that people realize, and that it looks like your eye test tells you there is. A lot of these guys, like Lundell, is super skilled. Lundell could look the first season when he was a rookie, he looked super like incredible skill wise, like ridiculous level of skill. He's kind of tempered that down like a little bit because he's playing more physical now. He's actually driving his line more. He's going to the front of the net, battling on the boards, which he wasn't doing as much. He was benching in the playoffs in his first season. So again, this is the difference. He's less flashy, but still doesn't mean less skill. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to say about the Panthers, guys. It's my team. I want to kind of give them the due. But also just kind of talk about this narrative. I don't think they're like a dirty, nasty team. They're a physical team. They're willing to fight. They have guys that get away with stuff or try to do stuff as a lot of other teams do, but not more or less than like other top teams. In my opinion, they're just less afraid maybe than other teams, or more willing to get into it more often if the other team's looking for it. Like we saw against the Bruins, where the Bruins were the ones starting stuff. The Panthers just they weren't going to back down. They're not a defensive team. They play strong defense, but they like to forecheck and attack and keep you in your zone. That's actually their identity. Their forecheck is more about that, more about keeping you on the boards, tiring you out, and then attacking when it's smart, and then taking what you give them. If you give them the point, they'll take the point shot. If you let them weak behind the net, they're going to do that. That's the kind of forecheck that they do. It isn't a one and done. Coaching our front office, I think elite, top of the league, top 3 in the league right now between Cito and Maurice and his staff. It's not just Maurice, it's his staff too. And then the talent. It's a very talented team. Definitely top 10 in talent for my mind and my money in the league. Again, it depends on how you define talent. Bedard is like more talented than everybody on the Panthers. Yeah, in some ways. But if you take into account the whole package, you look at a lot over the place, you would say that the Leafs are more talented than the Panthers. Yeah, maybe the top 3-4 guys by comparison. But as a team, I think the Panthers are super talented. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Looking forward to enjoying the playoffs and looking forward to the final, Stanley Cup final. My brother and I will record a preview later this week for the final and the Stanley Cup, depending on who we get, whether it's the Oilers or Dallas. And we might do a reaction video maybe during the week about that series. But for now, please, leave a comment, like, subscribe if you can. Trying to grow the channel again, Florida Hockey Bros. Just trying to bring smart, fan perspective hockey content with some Panthers center stuff, but we really want to talk more about the league. All right, guys, that's it for now. Thank you for the support. All right, peace.